Jem Schofield here with another episode of Gearbox 2.0, and welcome to another streaming media woe. I wouldn't say my voice is velvety, but I appreciate that very much. So, Chris, how's it going? Droid Media, how's it going? It is a happy Wednesday now that I have audio, and here we are on the live stream. Well, isn't it funny that this happened at the beginning? And it is a mess. So we're going to talk about a few things here at the beginning, and then I want to get into people's general questions about production and things that you want to try to sort out, which is kind of why I do the live stream anyway. Here's the deal. First and foremost, totally non sequitur and off topic, the AirPods Pro are pretty great, I have to say. Noise canceling is incredibly impressive. Audio quality, because of that, and also because of the style of the earbuds, is better considerably. I might be able to use them on an airplane without using my large Sennheisers. I don't use noise canceling headphones in general, but I've got a flight on Monday to the Windy City, so I may try that out. And speaking of the Windy City, I am leaving on Monday morning, the 11th of November, to go and set up for my first Chicago-based workshop, which will be at Able Cine, which is going to be fun. So there you go. So with all of that said, I have, as you may know, if you are a subscriber to the channel and you either come to these live streams or you come to the weekly Camera and Flask live stream on this channel with Caleb Pike, myself, and Ben Barden, know that our live streaming reliability factor is relatively low at times, sometimes non-existent, and some strange things have happened. The last of which was the least of which. No. I need more coffee. I need more caffeine for sure. Last week's episode was a cluster. Let's just put it that way. And it was a complete cluster all around, to the point where we had this thing with Livestream, which is the platform that I use currently for these live streams, where there was an error message that came up on my screen. All of our screens kind of went blank. It was as if we had a power outage. And then we started popping up one by one, and then Caleb and Ben couldn't hear me, I could hear them, and it was just a mess. And then, of course, somebody made a comment, "You can do better," as if we intended for that to happen. But what are you going to do? That's the internet, and people like to be really, really nice and supportive, and then sometimes they like to be really, really mean and not supportive. So there you go. So we started with Hangouts on Air, and let's just air grievances here. Come on, Google, what's up with that? You got rid of Hangouts on Air. It was a very simple solution. We didn't have to use Skype. We didn't have to use an additional software solution, an app, or things like that. And we didn't have to use one of these other services. Now, I really like Livestream in terms of the user interface and the way it's set up. I just have been having reliability issues. So let's first backtrack. I'm not an expert in any way in terms of live streaming, but one of the problems that I have up here on this hill is we don't have a solution for a constant or consistent high-speed internet connection. So I'm running up here off of essentially Wi-Fi hotspots, and we do actually, thanks, Gerald. We do actually have good cell service up here, and I'm fine for a Wi-Fi hotspot to run Netflix and Amazon Prime, and we don't have an issue with that. Quality is good. We have enough download speed that we can do that. I have a second dedicated Wi-Fi hotspot that I use for my business that is also good for general day in, day out internet access. So I have those two things, but we have no other real option here. There's no fiber. There's no other high-speed cable-based internet up here on the hill. And as a result, my two options are basically cellular some form of Wi-Fi hotspot, or I can go satellite. And the problem with satellite is it's not only expensive. From the research that I've done, I'm not getting any benefit in terms of upload speed. That beyond, actually, it's even lower than I would be getting through cellular. The problem is, how consistent is that connection? Not very consistent. And so definitely a contributor to some of the problems that we're having has to do with that. Now, generally, my upload speeds are plenty fast for, 2,500 kilobits per second, streaming. But there's some issues when it comes to using certain solutions. So for instance, OBS and also Mimo Live. We've been doing a test again with Mimo Live. The problem with that is that when I set that up, I can set up invite links for other guests to come onto the show, but it all comes into this computer and whatever connection I have. So it's incredibly powerful. It gives me lots and lots of options. I really like Mimo Live as a platform. I would be using it if my internet connection was consistently high, because then I could take the feeds that were coming from Ben and from Caleb, who has the best connection, and I could feed it through Mimo and essentially host that entire live stream. That's the same problem you're going to have using OBS when you are live streaming. So when they got rid of Hangouts on Air, which is very different, you essentially are using Google or YouTube as your hosting platform. Everybody's going through their stuff. Yes, your connection has something to do with it, but that's basically pushing out to the world using all of their technology and resources. So when Hangouts on Air officially went away, which was a pretty awful day, I had to look at other options. And there are a few of them that have come up and that exist right now. But the one that I found that seemed to be the most straightforward was something called Livestream. And I found that trying to connect directly to YouTube using your YouTube account is funky. But if you use essentially their solution and you're using RTMP, then it's pretty good. And you basically get a stream key, you have a web URL, and you connect to that, and basically your server. And then what's happening is you're using Lightstream's technology and their stuff. And then, yes, my connection has something to do with it, but then we're also relying upon other people's connections who are calling in terms of what that overall reliability is going to be. Zoom chat, not exactly cheap. Yeah. Okay, good. Leo, thanks for coming. So I like Lightstream. It's a reliability issue that I'm trying to figure out, is it them or is it me? Because that dropout we had last week seemed like it was them. And, once you're basically streaming and you have a relatively consistent upload connection, you should be able to get through, a 45-minute to 1 hour live stream without there being any major hiccups once it's all being pushed. But that doesn't seem to be the case in general. So we're just trying to do process of elimination. And the tough part about Lightstream is it's a free service. There is no paid option. So they do have support, but it seems semi-limited. And I don't doubt, I don't fault them for that. I'd be happy to pay $20 a month for something through Lightstream if I knew that it was rock solid and my tech support was amazing. Oh boy. Andrew, I don't know. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know if I'm gonna give you cleaning your context on your 70-200-28 IS version 2. Honestly, Andrew, I would take it to a camera store. They deal with lenses all of the time. I don't know what market you're in or where you are, but I would generally do that. I mean, I'll use just a cleaning cloth here that you use for your glasses and stuff, and I'll do that. Some people would say that you can use rubbing alcohol. I would just be really careful, in terms of that, and that's tricky. And remember that it's a two-way street. There, you have your contacts on your lenses themselves, and then also on the camera body. Generally, the camera body ones are pretty clean. So I'd look into that a little bit more. I generally don't have problems with my contacts, and I leave my lenses on my cameras as I take them out. I try to do lens swaps as little as possible when I'm out there in the field. Obviously, it's unavoidable sometimes, but that's what I would say. And I think there is really something to be said about long-term looking at camera bodies that are weather sealed or weather resistant, and the same for lenses themselves, because it definitely makes a difference. Okay, Gerald says, I'm sure the troubles are frustrating, but as regulars appreciate the effort. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I know that sometimes it's a little bit humorous, but I had a little conversation today with Caleb Pike over at DSLR Video Shooter, who's part of Cameron Flask and a good friend of mine. And I was saying, there's some humor and some novelty into the things that are happening right now, which kind of add to the quote-unquote charm of what we're doing with our live stream, but it's not a long-term solution, and I really do care about it. And so from that standpoint, we have to solve this problem, because in the end, we don't want people to be sitting there taking their time to be part of this community and feeling like every week there's going to be that moment of disaster. So it's, again, a process of elimination. And so what we're going to try to do, if we can work it out, is see if we can use Lightstream, because, again, we like this platform, but have Caleb be the one that is essentially setting up the stream. It'll be on my channel, and that's the thing that we have to work out, but it'll essentially be using his connection. So that's the next thing we're going to do, and that will either be today for this week's episode, or it will be 2 weeks from now. And the only reason it'll be 2 weeks from now is because even though I want to do an episode of Cameron Flask next week, I'm going to be in Chicago, and I will be traveling back when that happens. It was unavoidable based on when the flights occur. I'm going to try to do this every single week if I can. Yeah, I'm not upset by the glitches. I totally get it, even if it's completely dialed in. YouTube can cause troubles. Yeah, I mean, there are going to be unforeseen problems that will occur with the live stream, but if we can do everything we can on our end to help eliminate those problems, then that would be great. So first idea is continue to use Lightstream because we like it, and hopefully it will stay around or stick around. There are some other options, but the one that I like the most relies upon Skype for the call-in, so I don't want to do that. I looked at StreamYard. That looked interesting. I don't want a big duck logo, and I also don't want to pay for it until I know that it's going to be reliable. And my gut is it's probably not going to be any more reliable than Lightstream. So first choice, try Lightstream through Caleb, but on my channel. And then the second option will be to look at another option through Caleb to the channel, but that might be using a solution like Mimo Live or OBS. But I'm hoping we can keep this simple. That's the whole idea. That's why Hangouts on Air was so reliable. So there you go. So I do appreciate everybody coming, and we'll build this community, we'll build this content, and there you go. What I said, the AF was not firing with multiple. Okay, so this is back from Andrew with his contact. I was expecting that answer, but asked just in case there was an easy tip. I didn't think about the AF was not firing with multiple 5D4 bodies, but this went back to working. Thanks for answering. Oh, so it's multiple bodies. Glitches during only ever bother you guys, not us. Now it's part of the charm. No worries. Thanks, Leo. I appreciate that, and I know that that for our core community, that's absolutely true. But if this happens every single week, it's funny and it's humorous, and for the core, for the OGs, then I think it's okay. But when we're talking about building that community and having more people, you know, come into this little world that we're creating here, that it's important that we are able to focus on the content, and we are serious about that. You might notice that in more recent episodes of Camera and Flask, except for maybe that New York one that we had a few weeks ago with Dan Fakos and Matt Porwall, in general, I'm drinking a lot less than I used to. I literally took the flask part a little too literally in the beginning. And really what it's about is having those conversations. So I do like having a dram. I do like chatting with my friends, but there you go. Yo, David, how's it going? So that's the plan. We're going to do some tests here, and we're going to try to dial this live streaming in a little bit more reliably than we have in the past. Seems to be working well today, but remember, I don't have two other people on here, and usually what I'll do is I will go live to YouTube, not for you, but to YouTube a little bit earlier so that the stream is sitting there and I know that I've got that connection. And then basically when I've pushed that from Livestream to YouTube, at a certain point I say go live about a minute before the show, because there is some latency. We may be able to reduce that latency in the future if we come up with one of these other solutions so it's even more real time, which is also one of the difficulties, because myself, Caleb, and Ben, when we're doing Camera and Flask, what we're doing is we're looking essentially at the Lightstream feed so that we can have that conversation in real time. But then if we have it, and we usually do, another window open with the YouTube feed, there's always a little bit of delay, which is why in some of the episodes you've seen the end drop out too early, especially earlier on. Now what I have is I have a title card, and I basically wait for that to show up on the live output to YouTube, and then I basically I cut it out. Bad Karma, welcome. What did you miss? You missed everything about live streaming. Not really, come on, that's ridiculous. Just basically my woes with live streaming and some of the solutions that we're looking into. The first one will be still pushing to the channel, but maybe using Caleb's connection to do that. So I think that's all I'm going to go over today with the live stream. Right now, for Camera and Flask, one of the things that I do like is the 4-up, where we basically have the logo and then the three of us. And of course, if we have another guest, we'll just get rid of the Camera and Flask logo card or whatever you want to call it. So that's the deal. How's everybody else doing? What's happening this week? I'm going to talk to you about your production questions. Hey, Bad Karma. So if you have questions about camera systems or audio or lighting and things like that, there you go. Chris, my live stream setup is about as basic as it gets. Basically, I have camera HDMI out. The two cameras that I'm using on a regular basis are the C200, which is what we're using today. That happens to have the 24-70. Old version, which is a little, no, I have 1755 on here, the EFS lens, which I'm not thrilled with my copy. It's a pretty sharp lens, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that. But basically, that HDMI out from either the C200 or the XT3 is feeding into a 4K Cam Link little thing. It looks like a USB, you know, basically memory stick flash drive. And then that plugs into, because I have a MacBook Pro, which only has USB-C inputs, Thunderbolt 3, USB-C, a little adapter, which is basically USB into USB-C, and that takes that HDMI feed and pushes it with picture and sound into the computer. So that's my camera setup. And then I'm basically, you know, using a wireless lav, which is right here, and that's connected to my camera like it normally would be. So that's coming over the HDMI feed. And then I have the camera set to 23.98, 23.976. And then I just bring that in. And then in Lightstream, which is the solution I'm using right now for the streaming platform, I'm setting it to 720p 30. They don't have a 1080 option yet. And it seems to just take the 24, because going from 24 to 30 is usually fine, and it still looks like 24. And that's basically all I'm doing, except for the problems with the connections. So the resolution doesn't become an issue with those smaller screens. Nope. Camlink 4K is great. There's an older version, which is the HD version. When I did my original episode on this channel about Camlink, which is one of the earlier Gearboxes, I had the HD version. And the problem with that is it doesn't do 24. It'll only do 30. So there you go. Have I looked at the, Joseph's asking, have I looked at the Blackmagic ATEM Mini yet? I pre-ordered one, just waiting for B&H to send that shipping notice. Joseph, I pre-ordered one as soon as I possibly could. I actually got mine from DVE Store up in the Seattle area. I do order a lot of things from B&H, of course. And I am very excited about the ATEM Mini. Trying to figure out, and I've been watching some videos on figuring out if there's some solutions that are not too wonky to get a multi-view out. But I really feel like, for me, that particular product, even without that feature, is where I want to go with content for this channel. So the idea is that I want to be able to have a main feed or a master of me talking about certain things, and then I want to set up 2 or 3 other cameras that are giving us other angles so that I can do things like teach lighting setups and go over stuff like that. And I'm very excited about the ATEM Mini. So there you go. Noir et Blanc V. Gem, great info as always. Have you ever had to deal with dead pixels on a sensor, and what did you do? Does it make that camera garbage? Okay, good. So I'll answer that. Do me a favor in the future, use an @the_C47 when you're asking a question you want me to answer. It makes it a lot easier for me to pick it out. We don't have enough people for that to really be a problem right now, but as the numbers increase, it does make a difference. So I have had dead pixels. It really depends on your camera system. Sometimes, I guess, when you do sensor cleaning, it might do something on some of the smaller DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Black balancing is the secret sauce, but you're only going to start to find that on digital cinema cameras. So if you are having dead pixel issues, or I actually had a red pixel issue on a Cinema EOS C100 camera on a project, I black balanced, and that got rid of the problem. So Chris, I wonder if you can incorporate that ATEM using some NDI technology for the stream. I don't know what NDI technology is. It might just be too early, but please write out that acronym. So maybe I will know it, maybe I won't. Please do a video if you figure it out. Multi-view would be great, but not a deal killer. Having 2 views and an overhead would be amazing. Yes, Joseph, absolutely. So the idea would be to essentially have a wide shot of what I'm doing, and then as I'm going through a process, I can walk over to and switch to another camera. The one thing that I'm trying to figure out with the ATEM Mini, which I had been thinking about a couple of days ago, was whether or not I could come up with some sort of remote solution, so that as I'm walking to another location on a set, that I can switch to another camera without actually physically going over to the ATEM Mini. Now, I know there's software that you can have on your laptop, but I also don't want to carry around a laptop. So I don't know if they have an iOS solution to control that somehow. I don't think they do, but I would love to find out if there's some solutions like that. So for me, you know, it's not too hard to, in my case, set up 2 or 3 cameras and know what those views are. For me, the big deal is making sure I can switch to them easily without running back and forth to that physical box. Gerald says, any thoughts about checking out the Zcam? Hearing good things, looking forward to Mr. Bloom's review since he has had one for a while now. I'm excited about Zcam. Honestly, I think that they're kind of what I thought Kinfinity would be. They're a little bit more connected in terms of community. They're a little bit more connected in terms of information. I think that as a company, they're thinking about their branding and their marketing a little bit more than Kinfinity, which I was very excited about. I just feel like it's a couple of steps removed. And when you are a Chinese company making product and you're really pushing into the European and American markets, I think that you very much have to think about how you're connecting with your customers. And there's a certain point where you have to think less like an engineering company and more like a company that is creating community and also is thinking about branding and marketing strategy and all that kind of stuff. Chris says, look, I'm getting old here. Chris says, don't actually know the acronym. Basically allows you to incorporate incoming video feeds to you as devices to streaming software. Oh, got it. Yeah, that might work. I don't know how it would work in terms of pulling in feeds for something like Camera and Flask, but we're going to be looking into things. Joseph said NDI is a protocol to send feed over internal network through Ethernet. It's a new tech deal though, so I don't think it will play with ATEM. Got it. Okay. Yeah, and also, again, my issue, at least in terms of me with streaming, has a lot to do with the fact that I personally don't have, at this time, a connection that's reliable enough for me to do a lot of things with incoming feeds. If somebody else is hosting it, that's fine. But if I'm the one that's being relied upon, something's going to break at some point. And then hopefully, what's up, Six String, Brian? Hopefully, what's going to happen in the future is this hill's going to wake up and somebody's going to put some high-speed internet here. They actually did it down the road for a winery, and the people on that strip got lucky and they were able to upgrade, but that's a direct feed, and goodness knows, I'm sure that costs at least 10 grand to run that line. Yep, if your camera has pixel remapping or similar feature, it will check for dead pixels. So there are those things, and they're not just for digital cinema cameras, but black balancing will generally help with that to to a degree, or maybe even completely. And let's see, what else do we have here? Good. Okay, we're caught up. So what other questions do we have about production? I'm going to go for about another 15 minutes today, and then I have some client calls, and I got some prep to do. And one of the things that I've been working on as I'm waiting for additional questions about general production stuff is I've kind of hit a wall here, which is I would say in, small to no crew production in most production environments, I'm very comfortable with controlling light and lighting. But I feel like I've been a little bit stuck. I feel like I have this happens. You go through these waves creatively, and I think we're going to do an episode of Camera and Flask on this and talk about it, where you feel really comfortable about your knowledge about a particular area. And then for me personally, I hit this place where I'm always trying to learn, but I hit this place where I'm like, I don't know anything. And I know that's not true, but it's the feeling I'm getting, which is I have so much more to learn. And when you start, you're building knowledge and you hit sort of these plateaus, and then you kind of ride along for a while. And then all of a sudden something happens, and that just might be just you see something creatively, you watch something, and it sparks something, and then you realize, I don't know how to do that, or how can I do that? Or is the way that I'm going about things right now something that I need to change? And it's interesting. I've had those things happen throughout my career all of the time. I see some comments, so I'll get to those in a second. And I'm going through that process right now in a big way. So it's a little bit strange for somebody like me because I'm also an educator. So what winds up happening is as I go through this, I am struggling with like getting to the next level. And then I'm also trying to figure out how much of that struggle and how much of that learning gets incorporated into my teaching, because sometimes what I'm interested in or what I'm trying to get to or do is very different than maybe what somebody else who is at a different level below or above me is trying to get out of something educationally. So it's a strange thing. And when I teach, the levels of people in those rooms are all over the place. So that's also part of the challenge of teaching, is figuring out sort of the middle ground so that everybody gets something out of what you're doing. So, hey, Chris. Hey, Chris. Come on. Talk about production. Chris is Chris is amazing. Chris was really one of my first early experiences with somebody directing me on camera. Unfortunately, those videos still exist somewhere where I'm delivering content related to teaching Motion, Apple's Motion app. And I went down to, I believe we're in a studio in San Jose, and Chris was, and I'm sure is still, a great director, but he is also very much an editor, a big post guy, and also, from what I can see on the social side of things, an amazing woodworker who's building amazing things. So he and another guy I know out of San Francisco area, Jeremy Wyden, are both doing a lot of things in terms of woodworking that's pretty amazing. So I'm glad you're here. Here we go. So let's start to look at this. So I'm not presenting at Profusion. I would love to. I've done some stuff in the past. I used to do Henry's show every year, and I would do these stage presentations. And I have talked to them about doing something in the past, but I love Toronto, great city. And if I want to get a good curry, that is a good place to go. Have you looked at vMix software, which includes a way to bring in feeds from across the web as well as a web interface? I have not, Alex. The problem, again, which I'll just recap from earlier in the stream, is my connection is generally not reliable enough to take in outside streams. So I've got to use an online platform currently for our live stream. So we'll see what that is. So what we've got, what is an upcoming project you're most excited about? Troy Media is asking. Trying to work out doing a new lighting course. I think I'm pretty excited about that. I want to do something quite a bit different, which is part of this whole exploring and figuring things out. I'm also excited educationally, though it's only about 15% of what I do. I'm excited about not teaching in a different way, but I'm trying to take what I'm doing educationally from a lighting standpoint especially, and teach it in a different way than I have in the past. So there's going to be similarities, but it's just the structure or the way that I go about a one-day workshop, I think, is going to change. And I think that's going to be good for me and good for the people who are attending. And I've already started to do some of that. And I want everything to be as practical as possible, though there are times when I'm doing a small to no crew, production workshop where I have to go down some rabbit holes technically. I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate that more into the doing this part, so there's even less keynote, PowerPoint-ish, slide-based stuff. So I'm excited about that. There's some other potential projects that are coming up having to do with creating educational content, not me specifically, but for clients, meaning not the C47, but for client stuff that could be pretty interesting. And I'm really looking at the possibility of trying to find a short that I can shoot and possibly direct. I don't know. I'm really keep going back and forth on that one. So I just want to know who else thinks BM is going to release a Pocket 8K next year ahead of Sharp. Joseph, that's a good question. I think we're more likely to see a full format 35 millimeter Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K-ish type camera, but maybe a 5.9 or 6K camera before we see that, but I might be totally wrong. David learned the term shooting dirty. Yes, I like that. You got to shoot your, especially over the shoulders, OTSs, shoot dirty, shoot clean. Email me a shipping address. Okay, boom. Oh, product making. I always like products. Okay, Chris, I will do that. I don't know if I have your email. If you go to the c47.com/contact, those contact forms come straight to me. And then Chris, my phone number has not changed, but if you just want to reach out to me after this, that's fine. Chris is asking, oh, David, are you channeling Anthony Q, artist right now? Anthony, he's got some great content on lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning. He's an educator based out of New York, teaches NYU Tisch School, and he has a lot of lighting courses on lynda.com. Right? Am I right? Yeah. Anthony Artist, I met him. One solution to the low bandwidth could be to host the streaming software on a cloud server and bring the feeds in there. You could just turn it on during streams and power it off when done. Alex, that could be a good solution. I'm not opposed to any recommendations when it comes to making this whole streaming thing more reliable. So any suggestions like that would be great. If you have a suggestion in terms of a cloud server solution that might be very reliable, that would be cost effective, that would be great as well. Especially, I guess, because, well, I don't know how that would work, but I'm interested to find out more about that. There we go. What else we got? Okay, good. Boom, boom, boom. Interested in this thing Chris is talking about. I don't know what it is, but he's got me in a mystery here, which is always good. And by the way, we're talking about today on Camera and Flask tips having to do with camera, audio, and lighting. I have no idea what I'm going to say, and I'm going to let the conversation that I think Caleb is hosting take us where it will. Oh boy, David. I want to stay on this channel. Don't demonetize me here. What's happening? This is not Camera and Flask. You guys are going off the rails already. I don't know what's happening. Let's get some other questions about. I don't think shooting dirty has anything to do with that. And if you're not familiar with the term, if you're doing an over-the-shoulder shot, if you shoot clean and you're over the shoulder and there's a person right here, then you're just seeing them and the background. There's generally no foreground elements in the shot. But if you shoot dirty, you're usually feeling the backside of the person's head and basically their shoulder area. And one of the biggest things you have to do when you shoot dirty and clean is you generally have to shoot reverses. So if you're shooting, let's say, with a 50mm lens and you shoot dirty from this, then stay on that 180-degree line and then shoot a dirty from the other side. And then if you're changing focal length or you're pushing in a little bit with the same focal length, then if you're going to shoot clean on one, you want to do a reverse and shoot clean on the other. The other big problem we have when we shoot dirty is there tends to be, because of lighting, a little bit too much light on the person's shoulder here when you're shooting dirty. And so what you want to do is what we call slowing that down. So what you'll generally do is take a single or double net and you'll just bring that in a little bit to your light source and basically just slow that light that's hitting the back of the head and the shoulder down a little bit, and that will help tremendously with that. Next biggest camera tech or function you want to see. Droid Media, I would say, believe it or not, the thing that I'd love to see, there's two things that I'd like to see. I would like to see electronic ND built into mirrorless, meaning small format. Every camera that we shoot now, unless it's a DSLR, is a mirrorless camera technically, but small format mirrorless cameras, some sort of built-in ND functionality. And the second thing is audio related. I would like to see 32-bit float audio inside of camera bodies as an option. Chris, thanks so much, and good luck with the appointment, whatever that is. And hopefully you'll be back later on for Camera and Flask today at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be doing tips on camera, audio, and lighting. And again, I have no clue what I'm going to be talking about, but I guess I'll have to think about that between the end of this live stream, the million things that I have to do after that, and when we go live in about 5 hours and 15 minutes. So electronic NDs, yes, love the variable ones on the FS5, which is essentially what I'd like to see, which is that technology that's on the FS5, the FS7 Mark II, on the FX9, and that kind of stuff. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see float-based audio in these camera systems. And I'd also like to see solutions that are even smaller than what Zoom and Sound Devices are doing with double system sound solutions for 32-bit float. There is one thing that Tentacle's doing, which looks pretty interesting, which is in a small format, but I'm not quite clear as to their implementation and how they're dealing with it with, I think it's the ZaxCom patent here in the US. So there are some issues with having wireless transmitter receivers and recorders, combining those together in that patent. But let's see where all of that audio stuff goes. And other camera tech, I don't know. I mean, we have so many choices right now. I just like some additional things related to form factor and functionality. I'd love it if every manufacturer did what Sony and Panasonic were doing with their mirrorless cameras and had an accessory with XLR input options for the camera. I'd like everybody to up their game in terms of autofocus capabilities, which I think are incredibly useful for small to no crew production when you are using these cameras. What else would I like to see? Well, I'd like every mirrorless camera to have a flip up or flip out screen. And while I'm still going to rely upon an external monitoring solution from a company like SMALLHD or ATOMOS, I think that being able to have the option to not use those and make sure that they're bright enough and maybe have some additional tools would be great. Panasonic's really got it right when it comes to mirrorless cameras as far as the tools that you're getting internally. And, you know, speaking with Caleb Pike a lot over at DSLR Video Shooter, and my friend, he also said that the app control for that camera ecosystem for the mirrorless cameras, GH series, is stronger than pretty much everything out there. I don't know. That makes me happy, all of those things. I would like it if we started to shrink down and had even more reliable audio solutions. Letrasonics has an amazing tiny transmitter solution, but it's very, very expensive. And if we could see some evolution of what a company like RØDE is doing with the Wireless Go, but we could get into more traditional frequency range type solutions as opposed to just 2.4 gigahertz, or another band that we could be using that's less crowded, and maybe would give us more leeway in terms of distance between transmitters and receivers. So between lands, hey, welcome. I haven't seen you post before. I don't know if I've seen Stoked Fish post either. What do you think from between lands, between the S1H and FS Mark I for broadcast work? Wow, that's a big question. I can't tell you exactly how I feel about that from an S1H standpoint because I haven't used the camera system. I can tell you that from a form factor and feature standpoint that the FS7 Mark I and FS7 Mark II, if you want the variable ND feature, which I think is huge because you can pull ND going inside to outside, outside to inside, is a better all-around choice in terms of doing day in, day out broadcast work. Now, of course, you need the extension unit for the FS7 series in order to get basically, you know, time code, and also gen lock, which is important for broadcast sometimes. S1H doesn't, I don't think, has that option. So if you want time code, you'll have to go tentacle. And I do find that that smaller form factor is fumbly when it comes to doing corporate and broadcast style work. You know, there's a lot more you have to do to get that camera into shape as far as audio input, neutral density, building up a shoulder rig, all of that kind of stuff. So I would lean towards FS7 Mark I. There's obviously big advantages to the S1H in terms of if you want a camera with that sensor size, if you want options related to anamorphic shooting, but that's not really broadcast, so that kind of puts you into a different category, and that's really where I think you start looking at cameras like, oh, do I want the Pocket 6K Blackmagic camera or do I want an S1H? What are the advantages and disadvantages of those cameras? You know, one of them, of course, is price. One is $4,000, one is $2,500. And then as you start to build those cameras, what makes more sense for you as a user? Is it worth getting into color correcting, color grading as a beginner hobby filmmaker, or should I just take footage straight out of the camera X-T3? It seems like a daunting task. So Stokefish, that's a great question. You know, color is not my strong area in terms of what I do or what I teach, but I do look to cameras that have good color science, and then I do what I think I should be doing in production to make sure that I'm exposing my image correctly. And that really has to do with where you're exposing for middle gray, and depending on whether you're shooting log or not shooting in log, but also just making sure that I am figuring out and trying to dial in my camera settings so that they are either matching or I'm purposely changing my white balance to get a look in camera as far as how color is, not color, but my white balance is rendering. So it's very common, especially for narrative DPs and cinematographers, to shoot with certain color temperature lights and not go into the camera system and actually match that color temperature. So they might be shooting with a 3200 Kelvin light, and they might dial in their Kelvin temperature on their camera to warm or cool that image up or down in camera, because that's what they're looking for. Now, of course, when you're shooting log and you are shooting with different cameras, that may or may not play in, but even then, a lot of people will push a LUT or a lookup table and actually dial in their color temperature in camera because they want to make sure that that recorded image has something in it that is towards what the vision is for the director and the director of photography. So it is a daunting task. I would say first and foremost, what you should do is just experiment. The best thing that I could say with an X-T3 is shoot Eterna, shoot Chrome, shoot, you know, in the different basically film stocks and see what you're getting, and then flip the camera into F-Log and start to apply the LUTs that you can download and start to mess with those in post-production, and also try other people's LUTs, you know, try other LUTs to see what happens with those mathematical formulas with that camera system. And then there's just good education out there, and it depends on what platform you're on. But if you're doing, let's say, stuff in DaVinci Resolve, my big recommendation would be Alexis Van Herkman through Ripple Training. He's one of the best. He wrote the color correction handbooks. He's an excellent educator. He's an excellent writer, but he is also a colorist. And if you want good education in that area, I would look that way. 9:53, time for phone calls and all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce out of here now, and hopefully we had a good chat. Hopefully you learned something. I'm just thrilled that the live stream didn't go down. What I'm going to do now, great, Joseph, is I'm going to bounce over to the C47 logo card, which will not have audio. And as soon as I see that on the live stream over on YouTube, I will end the stream. Don't forget, today, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Camera and Flask with myself, Caleb Pike, and Ben Barden. We will see if we have a different hosting solution for the live stream today or not. If we don't, no promises. we'll see. The core crew. If you have not subscribed to this channel and you're new here, please subscribe, tap the bell if you want notifications when new content goes up. It's not often. I don't bug people. I use community to just basically announce when a live stream is going to be coming or when it's gone live, because sometimes the notifications on YouTube system are like a day late, which is ridiculous, or at least hours late. And it'll also just let you know what's going on here on the channel. And again, thank you very much. And I'm switching over to the logo.